Hi everybody! What did you know about pirates? Often when we imagine pirates, we think about their appearance, such as bright and distinctive clothing, tricorn hats and earrings. But what if you were wrong about that? What if things you often see in movies and TV shows are false and have nothing to do with reality? Today I'm going to discuss the physical appearances of pirates and tell what is true and what is false. So yeah, be ready to think and learn something new. Alright, the first thing is their appearance. When we think about pirates, we often imagine bright and distinctive clothing, and that pirates wore headgears and earrings. But was it true? Let's first talk about the colors and what they wore. According to the historian Angus Constant, not a single image of pirates made by eyewitnesses has been preserved. There is also no evidence that pirates ever wore clothing particularly different from that worn by other 17th-18th centuries seamen when working on a sailing ship. Yes, perhaps the captains could wear something fancy ashore, but I don't really think that during a sea expedition you would wear an elegant clothes. Why did I make this conclusion? Well, this is because life at sea was a tough career and clothing had to be both hard-wearing and practical. So, it was not practical to wear something fancy when you could be wet during storms or dirty because of the unsanitary conditions on ships, which was very common on the ship. In terms of colors, blues, tans, dark greens, whites, and grays predominated. Most clothing was plain, but there were also stripes and checkered patterns. But then, what did pirates wear in real life? Well, according to historian Angus Constant and D. Rickman, clothes of hard-wearing linen and wool were the most practical for life at sea. So yeah, as a result, there is no evidence that pirates wore bright and distinctive clothing. And even if they did, it was most likely pirate captains when they were ashore, not during sea expeditions. Okay, but what about the headgear and tricorn hats? Unfortunately, or fortunately, it has already been noted that pirate captains are not known to have worn tricorn hats, although it is possible that more gentrified ones did sometimes, and I will give examples later. Yes, tricorn hats were common on land among influential people such as the upper classes and military ashore, but it was not very common among pirates. For example, tricorn hats were worn sometimes by former privateer Captain Kidd and former plantation owner Stede Bonnet. Tricorn hats were also in fashion among overland travelers. But you need to understand that tricorn hats had one big drawback, which is why pirates didn't wear them. And it was that they weren't very practical on a ship. The big front part of the hat stuck out, so it could block your vision. On a moving ship where ropes, pulleys, and wooden beams are constantly swinging around, you need to see clearly and duck quickly, so the hat would just get in the way. A hat with 3 white points would also easily be blown away in strong winds, which was common during the storms. From what we know, some pirates wore different hats. For instance, Bartholomew Roberts was known to wear a feathered hat, while Blackbeard, aka Edward Teach, was known to wear lightened wigs under his hat whenever he went into battle. In addition to that, something you might not know is that some captains wore wigs. Yeah, this is because wigs were fashionable among the wealthy nobility in the 17th and 18th centuries. Wigs of that time were expensive to make, and the longer they were, the richer they looked. Known for their sophistication and extravagance, some pirate captains could decor their white or black wigs with colored ribbons, tied at the ends. As a result, pirates have never worn tricorn hats and they give more preference to the little hats that you can bend back. As we see in the movies and illustrations, pirates are famous for wearing colorful bandanas. But was it true? The answer is both yes and no. there's very little evidence they ever wore bandanas. Yes, ordinary sailors sometimes wore a scarf tied around their heads, leaving the top of the head exposed, which served as a sweat band, and in this case the knot was usually tied in front rather than at the back like we see in the movies. Most of the time, sailors wore tight wool or leather hats in cold weather so they wouldn't blow off. In rain, they used tarred canvas hats and capes for waterproofing. Storm gear, slopes, was shared among the crew. In warm weather, they wore light round hats with narrow brims for sun protection. So, it is very possible that pirates wore this type of hats described above. Ultimately, some pirates, a small percentage of them, could wear bandanas during the summer, but there is little evidence of it. Most of the time, pirates wore wool or leather hats in cold seasons and light round hats in warm weather. Okay, now the last thing is accessories. When we imagine pirate, we often picture them with gold earrings. At least I do, because I've seen it many times in movies. But did pirates actually wear earrings? Modern historians question the idea that pirates, at least during the golden age of piracy, wore earrings. None of the modern sources, such as books and illustrations, show pirates wearing earrings. In fact, earrings were actually worn by Dutch sailors, particularly in the 17th and 18th centuries, often as a form of burial insurance. At the same time, wearing earrings and other accessories was the fashion trend mainly among dandy courtmen. Who is dandy courtman? Let's be clear. Dandy is a man who is very focused on fashion and looking fancy. Courtmen, men who spend time at the royal court around the king or queen. So yes, earrings were common for fashionable courtmen and Dutch sailors, but not for pirates. As a result, even if some pirates did wear earrings for practical reasons, it was not very common or widespread as movies suggest. In simple terms, maybe 1 to 5% of pirates wore earrings, while the other 95% didn't. Then why do we still believe that pirates wore earrings? This is because Howard Pyle, an illustrator and author in the 1800s who wrote and illustrated a number of pirate-themed books, put earrings on his pirates and his images became iconic. Pyle's pirates typically wear large tricorn hats, head scarves, hoop earrings, and long flowing sashes, none of which appear in the historical record for either sailors or pirates of the golden age of piracy. More than anything else, this shaped our modern image of pirates and made us believe that figures like Blackbeard wore earrings. And at the end of this video, I want to show you one quotation that I really liked. Today's ideas of pirate dress, including headscarves, hoop earrings and long dangling sashes, are myths inspired by authors and illustrators who needed to create a recognizable pirate archetype in order to tell their stories. Real pirates were sailors who had turned outlaw, and there simply is no evidence that they ever dressed as anything other than seamen. Constant Angus. So yeah, think and learn something new every day. Bye.